George Harrison's transition pictures. This guy had several careers, really. He was in the Beatles, obviously. Then he had his solo career. Then he joined the Travelling Wilburys, formed that, and had massive hits with that. He also financed Monty Python's Life of Brian, the #1 comedy of all time, probably. He financed that by mortgaging his house. In fact, a friend of mine, 2 years ago, went to stay with his wife, Olivia, at Friar Park, which is the house that they had, and said it was a lovely place and that George loved gardening, and the gardens were immaculate because of George. But he was obviously, in the 1960s, he was lured into the, in a lovely way, lured into the Hare Krishna thing. And whereas both John and George were LSD guys who saw spirituality in the world and whatever and wanted love for everybody and peace, John Lennon didn't go down the God route in the end. John Lennon said, I think we're all responsible for our own actions, which were reflected in the pictures last time. Whereas George Harrison went down the Hindu road. In fact, when he died in 2001 of lung cancer, his ashes were spread on the Ganges in India. So when I went into his pictures for his transition, I wasn't quite sure what to expect. And at first, I wait in this symbolic tunnel for the person to arrive in whatever form they arrive. And he simply didn't show up. What I didn't realize was that I was standing in the wrong place. I was expecting him to come in conventionally, and he didn't. Over here, further down, further into the process, there was a second tunnel entrance, kind of up there. George Harrison, his spirit, was peering in through the hole. But he was huge. Now, if you take it that a big tunnel and a small person is meant to indicate that greatness, as I said with John Lennon, greatness doesn't extend beyond death. You may be great in life, but that doesn't mean you're great in the afterlife. You're just a soul, a consciousness traveling. He had the opposite of that. He was almost too big for the tunnel, almost like he was really humble, really switched on to what the process was, and really knew himself at his core. There's an amazing meme going around. It appeared on Instagram, I think, from Anita Morjani. And she says, as you love yourself, love the real you. The you who has feet of clay. The you who has failed. The you who has succeeded. Even the you who sometimes receives criticism. Love all of you. Because that is the real you. And that's what came to mind when I did George Harrison's pictures. That this was the real him. Humble, open, willing to experience what was going on. But maybe with preconceptions about what it was going to be. So I get him down the tunnel, and as he goes along, he gets smaller as he realizes that he didn't fully understand what was going to happen, that it was new, this to him. But as he walked along, he was scuffing himself against the side of the rock wall. I mean, it's not really rock, you understand that it's symbolic, but it was scuffing his arm against the rock. And it was kind of chafing, like, we're taking this layer of skin off you. Because this is your layer of skin that relates to the expectation you had of this process. This is making it harder for you to transition because you come with these preconceptions. That's what was really remarkable about this. With a lot of people, they seem to have to be built up for the process. They have to be guided through because they're fearful or doubting or whatever. With him, it wasn't like that at all. Some people gasp for air because there's no air here. And it's like, I need to breathe. But they don't need to breathe. He didn't have a problem with that. It was like, oh yeah, okay, I get it. Very easy, but it still needed scuffing. It still needed a little bit of abrasion to wipe off, to knock off, to chip off some of the expectations about this process. But it wasn't about humility, it was simply about being realistic about what this was. And as he walks, the uplift happens. That sense of, this is shifting sands beneath your feet. You can just lift. Just, rise up. And he did, with remarkable compliance and ease and willingness. Yeah, look at this. Floaty, floaty. Off he went. Very easy. But once again, the hands of grace, these angel hands that pull you forward, that induce you into the final stages of this transition. These hands didn't pull him forward. They wafted him to the sides of the tunnel. They buffeted him to scrape even more preconceptions off him. To take him from what he had been when he started off this process to being more raw. Very interesting. It's like we have to drop our meta-narrative. What we've been told will happen is not what happens. What we are expecting is not what really is going to happen, because it's a process unto itself. And human, mortal meta-narratives, no matter how powerful and convincing they are, don't necessarily capture the reality of what this process is. And he arrives at the same metaphorical chamber I always see. No resistance whatsoever, like, wow. Oh, wow. And he floated around it. And when you get a splinter in your hand, it goes under your flesh and it slides in and you have to kind of pull it out. It's like it goes in sideways. It's really annoying. That's how he slipped into this membrane thing that I always see. He floated around it, he got closer to it, closer to it, closer to it, and then slid under, as though there was a flap, and he slid under the flap. And for a second or two, I could just see his shape beneath the surface of this dome thing. And then he faded away and was gone. That was that. To me, that was one of the most interesting ones I've done. Because there's so much resistance in other people's pictures. Like, no, I don't want to go. Or I want it on my terms. Or I got to go back. There are things I've got to deal with. We've seen all of that. With this, it was just like, I have prepared for this as part of my life path. I've waited for this. Not wanted it necessarily, but I have waited to experience what this moment would be. And it was almost savoured with utter compliance. But the most interesting thing was the fact that his preparations spiritually, from his teachers, his mentors, those who had shaped his views on what death is about, those things that form preconceptions, that outer skin, had to be removed. Because it was as much of an obstacle to transitioning as resistance or ignorance or willfulness, ego. Which really is a fascinating side of the meta-narrative thing I've been talking about for quite a time. How those tribal scripts help us in life form a community, be part of something, to belong, to relate to other people who have similar beliefs. But once you go into the death process, the transition process, that isn't a necessary tool you need. You don't need that support. In fact, you need to lose it lose the beliefs in order to move through the process in a way that's the most efficacious. In order to embrace your destiny, in order for your soul to be open enough to embrace your destiny. To me, that is the most fascinating thing. I learnt a lot from George Harrison. Much as I loved his music in life, in death, I learnt a tremendous amount from him. So I'm incredibly grateful. All right, that's it. Thank you very much for watching. I really appreciate it. Like, subscribe, you know, all the rest of the stuff. Follow me on Twitter if you want, at Cash Peters. But stay safe, that's really important. This ordeal is almost over for us, and soon we'll be free. All right, have a great week, guys. I'll speak to you very soon. Bye-bye.